I had a couple of wonderful ideas for messages today when I volunteered to do this, and as I tried to work on them, it just couldn't happen. And this verse kept coming into my head and demanding my attention, and I finally gave into it. And I've worked day and night for a month on this thing. It's been interesting. It's something I couldn't have explained to you a month ago to save my life. So anyway, I took it that that's what it's supposed to be, and I hope that it'll be of some meaning to you. I am going to begin with the passage of Scripture. By the way, I've studied Scripture all my life. I came from a tradition where we thought quoting it was something special, and so I can still quote a lot of scriptures from the olden days, and studied them through a Bible major in a conservative college and seminary, and years of ministry and all that kind of thing, and I've always had a battle with them. And when I became a New Age person, I looked and I said, oh my God, that's what it is. It's a book of New Age theology. And that's it. Plain and simple. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place, and suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a mighty wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit, and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit gave them the ability. Now, we're not New Thought people, and we believe that our mission is to be the presence of God on earth. It's a pretty bold goal, isn't it? Or, as we often say it, to be the Christ of our world. In the eye of the storm, Unity Minister Gary Simmons says, your purpose is the universe's intention to be through you the presence of God. Pretty big for me. Now, I was raised down in the country where I wouldn't say things like, well, I'm the presence of God on earth, and I'd say yes, and where were you locked up? or either that would be blasphemy, and I'd say, oh my God, I may be struck dead for saying that. But I've come a long way from my roots, and I certainly accept with my mind and my heart that that is the reality of my life. But you know, I still have trouble saying that boldly sometimes. We had a guest minister at Unity South one time, and she popped in the pulpit and said, hi, I'm Lori the Christ. And I thought, wow, that is just a little bit bold. But that was the first sentence of her sermon, and it did make the impact that she wanted it to make. Anyway, do you ever have trouble accepting and saying that that is really your role? Well, Simmons goes on to say, now I know what you must be thinking. You don't feel worthy enough to consider yourself on the same level as Jesus. Well, don't fret. Now, he wrote this line for me. You're probably not on the same level as Jesus. But you are on the same journey.
Amen.
You're in the process of awakening to God's idea of you. Jesus is your role model, your elder brother. He demonstrated that with God all things are possible, and he told us we could do the same. And he goes on, saying, until you take complete ownership of your purpose to be the Christ of your world, you will not find inner peace or wholeness. It may take some time getting used to, but eventually you'll see that everything in you longs to be about this purpose. Jesus called it his Father's business. So I am Kelley the Christ, and I accept that. And you're Donna the Christ, Norma the Christ, Anthony the Christ, Katie the Christ and city. Mark the Christ. We are all the Christ of our world. But I still wonder what it means to be the Christ. I've said that for many years. And I think it's been sort of theologumena. Now, theologumena is a word we use, when preachers go out and they say all the right words, and it's so inspiring. People say, oh, that was so wonderful. But if you look back at it, they didn't say anything.
Yes.
It's similar to what politicians do.
Very similar.
And so, in a sense, being the Christ of the world has been a category to me. And nobody ever explained what it meant, much less how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I do know that being the Christ of the world is about serving a higher purpose on earth. I can tell you that. And I found two big clues in what I read from Simmons. First of all, he says Jesus is our role model. And secondly, he quoted that Jesus has said, you can do the same works that I do. So those are two clues for what it means to be the Christ of the world. Now, a few months ago, Reverend Cindy based a lesson on a book called Power versus Force. Well, again. Okay.
Hang on, we'll help you out. Texas.
Well, anyway. Oh. Okay, Power versus Force. Now, Katie and I bought this book and read it, and I thought it was utterly profound. And I learned a lot from it. And from this book, I learned a new perspective on what it means to be the Christ of our world. My vague notion of what it probably was is to be the Christ of my world, I'd need to be a Mother Teresa type day and night for the rest of my life. However, I found out that's not quite the case. And that's not what Jesus did. And what Jesus did served a much higher purpose than that would have served. Hawkins said that the great avatars, such as Jesus, the Buddha, and Krishna, have changed the world through consciousness. Not through the deeds they did, but through consciousness. And he pointed out that the mere presence of these people changed the vibrations of the universe and changed the conditions of life on the planet. So what I learned from Hawkins is the most important part of being the Christ takes place in consciousness. It has more to do with who I am than what I do. Because who I am has an energy signature in the world. It vibrates at a certain frequency. And the more highly spiritually developed we are, the higher that frequency is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it has to do with what I think and who I am. And it's our job as the Christ of the world to raise the spiritual consciousness of the universe. So we're universe builders. Now in theology, we had to read all the great theologians. Think about Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, Luther. Think about reading Calvin Institutes. I almost died. Period. One of the theologians made total sense to me. I think he was simple enough that I could understand it. Karl Barth said God is always creating and always redeeming. Now, when I was raised up, creation was in the first chapter of Genesis, and redemption came later, but at particular places. But God was always creating and redeeming, and our purpose in life is to be co-creators and co-redeemers. And I thought, well, that's pretty big, but it makes total sense to me now that it is we who create the world. And it is we who redeem the world by leading people to higher states of consciousness,
Amen.
Helping them improve higher levels of life. And Karl Barth made it really simple. Our only role is simply to accept the claim that God has made on our lives. And what is that? We just talked about it. It's to be God's idea of us, the Christ of our world. Well, as I begin dealing with the concepts that Hawkins had in the book, I do have something I want to come back to. This was from Cindy 2 weeks ago, and I said, I've got to put that in. And here it is. I think this is the most profound thing you're probably ever going to read. And it is the heart and soul of what New Thought theology is all about. Katie and I were talking about conventional churches and New Thought, and I'm saying, it's two totally different worldviews. And she says, it's parallel universes. And I think that really does describe it. But here's the heart and soul of it. The highest God and the innermost God is one. Now, I'm an old English teacher, and I initially cringed at that. And then I thought about the math. Math's not my long suit, but I know if you add 1 plus 1, you get 2. But if you add 1 plus the same 1, it seems to me it should be 1 all over again. And that's kind of the nature of God. There is only one presence and one power in the whole universe, and that's the same presence that's out there and the same presence that's in here. So the God in the highest heavens and the God in my heart is one God, plain and simple. Now, we live in a quantum world, and I think this is really important, and I don't think I could understand being the Christ if I didn't know this tiny little bit about quantum physics. Nothing exists in the whole universe except energy. God is nothing but energy. We are energy. Our thoughts are energy. And the important thing about it is it's all the same energy. And when I think something, the energy of the universe has changed. I enter into that. When I bring my presence into a situation, my vibratory pattern is there. And as I said, the more highly spiritually developed I am, the more good that I can do in the universe. Theoretically, we raise the level of spiritual consciousness of the universe when we bring our high energy level into the situation. And when that happens, the conditions of life will be improved. This is why what Jesus did is so much better than being a day and night forever Mother Teresa. Because Mother Teresa, saint as she was, worked all her life. And the day after she died, the same people needed to be fed again. She did not change the conditions of the world to make it a world where God's abundance is shared more freely, nor did she inspire people to do better and to raise themselves in consciousness. So to be the Christ of the world in consciousness and to raise the spiritual frequency of the universe is to do a powerful lot of good in the world. So we create a world in which people will be able to meet their needs. There'll be fewer people in despair, fewer people hungry, less greed, a better distribution of resources, more security because we can have more peace on earth and better opportunities to live in that peace, and less competition. And we can have more cooperation. By the way, you all heard about the survival of the fittest. The fittest are those who can cooperate.
Amen.
Our level of energy, our energy field, determines the consciousness of the universe. And to raise it, we have to be functioning ourselves at a high spiritual level. And what we bring to the universe is contagious because our energy field is also an attractor field, attracting like to itself. And so we create more and more and more of what we are in the world. Now, Hawkins studied levels of consciousness, and these are complicated to me. It would take a long time to go through them. but we put them up here where you can look at them. The lowest is shame. It resonates, or it calibrates at 20 on a scale of 1 to 1,000. And this is an exponential scale where the difference between 1 and 1,000 is universes away. Can't even imagine how they're related together, because this is 1,000 to the 10th power compared to 1, for instance. So shame is a really low deal. By the way, shame, we believe something's wrong with us. And it's so wrong with us that anybody can just look at us and see it. So we drop our heads in shame. Don't look at me. Guilt, apathy, and grief. Grief, this is a constant woebegone life, a remorse for what isn't, or what was, perhaps, or at least what you think might be. But all of these are kind of immobilizing levels of energy, and they put a drain on the universe. We begin getting some energy in it at fear, which calibrates at 100, but it's the motivation to do anything crazy to avoid what we think we're scared of, or what's going to happen to us. So it seldom creates. It can, but it seldom creates positively. Desire is this greed, this I'm nothing, so I need more and more and more and more and more. And then anger, which, blames and seeks revenge and that sort of thing. And pride at the highest level. Pride's always fragile because it's based on external resources. It's not like esteem, which is based on internal resources. The positive energy to help the universe begins at 200 with courage. And I like to think of that, the courage to be. And maybe the courage to be the Christ of our world. And then neutrality is to be free of judgments, to deal with issues without being judged. Willingness to participate of life in the flow of life. This is really simple. I think it's worth studying, but it takes a study to, and I studied it. Still haven't got it. so it's complicado. Okay. Anyway, acceptance of life the way it is. Reason. This is the ability to deal with facts rather than, judgments and preconceived notions. Is 400. Love is 500. Now, I want to tell you, on an exponential scale, love is vastly higher rate of vibration than fear. And so just a little bit of love can overcome a lot of fear. And so what's important about our lives is a balance of 200 or above. Because, a few loving thoughts, kind thoughts, meditating on peace can counterbalance a lot of the energy in our lives. And if we do enough of it, it counterbalances the energy of other people in our lives. Now, interesting here, joy is a little bit higher at 540. Peace, the highest of all, at 600. Huh?
You're pushing it.
Oh, goodness. Oh, I've come a long way. Sorry, I always have trouble with mics. And
You hit 1,000 and went crazy.
I did. Anyway, peace and then enlightenment is the level of avatars. Saints begin in the 600 level, by the way. Now, and then avatars in the 7 to 1,000. He gives Jesus 1,000. In the presence of one avatar can change the whole world, counteract the negativity of the whole world. Well, interesting, the consciousness of the universe is neutral until it's acted upon in some way. And then we act upon it. And depending on what we contribute to it, it depends on how positive the calibration of the whole world is at any given time. And I think it's easy to see that we've had some times when when it was really low in the world. Take Hitler. He says 2.6% of the population contributes 72% of all the problems. And think of the power that one person or a group of persons can have to drag down the consciousness of the whole universe. When we calibrate below 200, actually, we drag it down at all. For instance, our anger can literally make a more hostile world. And when we calibrate above 200 in our energy level, we raise it. Because our kindness can literally create a kinder world. So it's pretty interesting the way he gives us a way that we can understand how this works. I don't think I could get it just abstract, but having some categories and seeing the steps, I can understand it. Well, I thought perhaps something we could do today is actually experience an exercise in being the Christ of our world. And I'm not doing it just for an exercise in church. You don't turn it in and get graded. This is going to be the beginning of one that's going to go on for a long, long time. So I want you to be aware that you're the Christ of the world, and we're going to participate in the Christ Project. I did, by the way, find this affirmation in yesterday's Daily Word. Katie actually found it, and I have added it in here at the last minute. And I thought, let's start with this. We're the Christ. I have the power of the Spirit within. Want to join me, please? I have the power of the Spirit within and the ability to make a lasting difference in the world. So that's the consciousness we're going to start with. Now, Reverend Cindy is leading the peace movement through this church. And, some people will be participating in that, and others may not be overtly participating in it. But I think we can all make a big difference because we can hold this effort in consciousness. And I think we need to do this every day. It's one of the things that we should just always be aware that we're part of it for the beginning. But to help manifest it, I'd like for us to make it a part of our daily spiritual practice. Now, how we do that varies a good bit from person to person, I think, but it has some common elements. I want to suggest first that we affirm it. And I've written an affirmation, CSL Ocala is a center for peacemaking. Is that any more?
Sure.
I think we should put it up in here. I think we should have it up every day on our board. And it reminds us that this is a center for peacemaking. We want to believe it. We want to pray for it. We want to meditate on peace, meditate on making peace, and want to visualize it serving the community. And I'll come back to things we do a bit because this is one of two related initiatives that are taking place in this city right now that are great opportunities and need help. There's also an effort underway in Ocala to get Ocala officially designated as an international city of peace. Think about that. And I know several members in this congregation have supported that. I went one day and Katie couldn't go to hold down a seat. I was glad I did. They proposed the city council approve this, and the city council asked for people supporting it to stand up. So I thought, well, being here like a knot on a log really did help. So keep that in mind. And the next city council meeting, when they were supposed to vote on it, I wasn't there, but I understand a group of citizens showed up in a rage, protesting it. And I think that's part of, in this country, this is political, so throw me out if you want to. I think in this country we're afraid of peace. I think we have been trained so systematically for so long to believe the whole world is out there trying to get us. And if we're not at war, we can't begin to relax and be at peace.
Amen.
And I'll tell you what, that's a big hurt on my heart. If that's my own country. And I think this initiative can really be helpful in that respect. So I want to encourage that we hold this in consciousness too. And you may say, well, doing that wouldn't mean anything. It's just a formality. It would just create a category. But I'll tell you what, it'll change the way people think.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the city have officially designated that. We'll be more aware of it. It'll be a reminder everywhere we look. And we'll have permission, perhaps, to want peace in this society. And I think we need that. But now, I want you just to imagine you're driving and you come to Ocala and you look out there and see the sign. It says Ocala, Florida. International City of Peace.
Awesome.
That can happen.
Mm-hmm.
It does. Cities claim their goals right on those signs. When you get a letter on city stationery about some zoning issue or whatever it is, it'll say City of Ocala, Florida, International City of Peace. There it is. On the Chamber of Commerce materials, the Tourist Bureau materials, it will be there. Our thinking will become, we're part of the City of Peace. It'll affect the people who move to Ocala, and it'll affect the community, make it a better place for families and for children, a safer place for people to live. It'll create an expectation that when I have a problem, I say, well, I can solve this in a peaceful manner. I think it can change the world. And I would have never thought of it, I'll be honest. Having that designation, I think will change Ocala, maybe the world. It'll open doors. It'll encourage other organizations to have peacemaking activities and to think more that way. It'll produce guidelines for training that will be accepted by the city. It may open the doors to schools for young children and begin growing up this way. And train teachers and children how to work together with one another. I thought, this is wild. It'll probably affect the work of the police. And what if policemen in Ocala underwent training as officers to be agents of peace?
Amen.
Think about that.
Amen. Amen.
I thought about that yesterday when an unarmed juvenile was killed again in this country. That really grieves me that we have so much violence in this country. When enough people rise to a higher level of consciousness about peace, we will automatically begin thinking differently.
Yes.
The world operates this way.
Yes. Yes.
We look around and what we see is how we think. So we can make it a better world and it can spread through the community. I watched What the Bleep. It was a story where I think back in 1993 somebody hypothesized that if people in Washington D.C. meditated, that it would reduce the crime rate. It said at that time it was the murder capital of the world. Anyway, 4,000 people came to Washington, D.C. and meditated extensively. It's the only thing it gave. Anyway, according to FBI stats, the crime rate dropped 25%. Spiritual practice can change the world, and it doesn't always have to be in ways that we can add up 1, 2, 3. It goes through the universe and comes out something different on the other end. So I would like to see us set a strong intention to support both of these peace movements, that they're important to us and we're going to be a part of them. And you don't have to do a whole lot except hold it as a priority in your life. Set aside a little time every day for prayer, meditation, and visualizing, for heaven's sakes. Visualize this. I want to visualize the city council approving it. I want to pretend I am sitting there. And I tell you what, visualize this every day. And someday it'll happen.
Yes. Yes.
So to see the city council approving, feel the sense of relief. Okay. Look at the smile. hear the applause, and it can happen right here in Ocala. So, are you in?
I'm in.
It's already happening.
I'm in. I'm
Very
in.
good. Well, this was the most unlikely lesson for me to do, I think. But after many hours of study and preparation, I'm convinced that the level of consciousness we bring to the universe determines the level of consciousness of the whole universe. I'm convinced that collectively we are the face of God on earth, and that we are the Christ of the whole world. Each of us maybe is a mini Christ, but together, you know, it can be really big. We can all increase our level if we need to, of course. But we are part of the vibrations of the universe, and we really do create the world, and we redeem the world with our vibrations. Now, I believe I can keep most of my life an average of 200 or above. That's tough. I started at 20. That is no joke. That's no joke. I started at 20. I can't get rid of all the negativity because I have to deal with some negative issues, so I'll give myself occasional license. I need it after all these years, you know? But I can change the way I deal with negative issues.
Yes.
And I think that's important. I don't have to stay negative forever, and I don't have to get so emotional about things like politics. And so I can bring some of those back, and I believe you can do that too. I also believe Simmons was right. At least for me, I'm not on the same level as Jesus or anywhere close. And I suspect most of you aren't quite up there yet either. But I do know that we're all on the same journey, and we're in the process of becoming all that God has created us to be. And we really don't have to be a Buddha or a Jesus or the Dalai Lama to change the world. Ordinary people can do that, and each one of us can contribute. And we can do it in a big way, and here's why. And I'm going to come back to my text. I just have to deal with this. See, what happened that day in Jerusalem had nothing to do with one day in Jerusalem. It has to do with that sometime in our lives, if we have a state of readiness, which Jerusalem does in fact represent, and we open our mind and heart to God, then the Spirit of God comes to us. This is very similar for us. And Katie suggested I not go here, but you know when the heavens opened and it said, "This is my beloved Son," that was Jesus' realization of who he was.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, that's who I am. That's what this verse is to us. That we open our minds and the Spirit of God fills us and comes on through us to bless the world around us. So it represents the process of realizing the truth of who we are and what we can do, and know that we can express that truth in the world as Christ. So whether you experience the Spirit of God coming gently into your consciousness or see it as a mighty rushing wind and tongues of fire, the outcome's the same. You're filled with the presence and power of the Holy Spirit, and everything you need to be the Christ of your world is within you. So you are the Christ of your world, and you can do great things. And so it is.